I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to support the channel, please go check out the link in the description for some awesome TGS merch. Old Berettas are better than new Berettas. Everyone knows that, don't they? Or at least that's what we're told all the time. So I thought we'd take a couple of minutes and chuck a new one next to an old one. Let's go. So it seems logical to start at the back as we always do. First, mentioning that new Berettas come with an interchangeable pad system. That's great, you know, that means you can make a gun out to like 17 inches all the way down to about 14 1/4. Hugely beneficial. Back when this gun was made, this is a 2018 gun and this is a 1985 gun. Let's just clear that one out. They either came with this kind of brown pad or a thin curved plastic butt plate. That was it, you know, the gun was the gun and then you had to have it adjusted accordingly. And they were knocking out, you know, either at around the 14 1/4 mark. The wood grade didn't really change a huge amount. This is a particularly nice silver Gen 1 grade 1, however, this is a 687, this is supposedly a deluxe gun. So people say the wood used to be better, it's not a blanket thing, it's just, well, you know, it's not a bad bit of wood, is it? Let's look at that. It comes with an oval, but it's a 687, so of course it comes with an oval. You can get an oval on a Silver Pigeon brand new now, you just have to spend a bit more money. Moving into the dimensions quickly, and it's not worth dwelling on dimensions because different dimensions exist. However, their stocks have got higher and that suits a modern shooting style better than it did. You'll find a lot of older models, this sort of older field, for example, is lower than their new field, and to get something sort of equivalent to a modern gun, when buying something from 1985, you need to look at their sporting end or trap end to get a comb height that is more suitable for nowadays, again, ironically, but it's just the way it is. First, hugely noticeable difference more than anything, and it's not the finish, because the finish is kind of similar. I think the old finish was slightly better when you paid for an oil finish back then, purely because it was a sign of higher grade and the lower grades had lacquer, so the higher grade had a slightly better oil finish. Slightly better than the modern one, meaning that the modern ones wash out a bit quicker because they had to put quite so much effort in. That is probably a pro for the older one, but this isn't a score sheet, this is just a discussion, right? Checkering. They used to checker by hand, they now checker by machine. In terms of practicality, there is no goddamn difference whatsoever. However, hand checkering is lovely, isn't it? It's nicer. There's no denying that a hand checker gun is nicer for no reason other than somebody toiled, sweated, and was particularly miserable whilst working on this gun at some point, checkering it. It becomes more an art form than a practicality, and I understand and appreciate that wholeheartedly. However, practicality-wise, the laser checkering is fine. Although I would vote for the new one, the old one, on that note, because that's the way it is. Grips have changed slightly. And this is a field model, but actually even in the field model current, the grip is a little bit deeper, the stock is a little bit deeper, and the whole thing is just a little bit more grown up. And you can see the difference in stock width here. Yes, this is a sporter and this isn't, but it is greater in the modern guns than the old guns. Adds a little bit more weight more than anything. There's positives and negatives to that, but we're not going to get into that right now. It suits, doesn't it? Trigger guard. The trigger guard actually on the modern one is slightly more refined, has a slightly nicer radius, but on the whole, they're kind of the same. They're similar enough anyway. I think the modern one is actually nicer. Certainly would appear slightly better radius and better spec, however, is less finished. So you can still see some harsher grind marks, which is taken to a higher finish. And blacked, but that's not really the end of the world. Apart from that, you know, they are slightly different. They're slightly different. Oh God, I don't think one's better than the other, is it? It's just they're slightly different. I kind of prefer this. It looks more tactile. Whether it makes any difference whatsoever, I don't really know. Alright, first major difference more than anything is the hand engraved trigger guard that you got on this 687. This is hand done, probably rolled and then hand done, but it's hand done and hand inlaid. There's that actual hand inlet silver there, very nicely done. The rest of the gun isn't hand done, but that particular part is, whereas this is done by a machine. Does it affect the way the gun works? No. I mean, it's kind of a harsh one, isn't it? Because back then that was like 600 quid and they represented better value for money, but the Italian economy was less good, nobody wanted to buy them, and now they're hugely popular, spend a lot of money on marketing, and yeah, Who knows? This is not hand engraved. The action engraving quality is changed. You know, I think that's the thing that most people will quote when they talk about these things, is that they used to be engraved deeper and nicer, and that is true. They did. But you can get Berettas that are engraved better. I say they're deeper and nicer. It's a personal preference thing, isn't it? Some people really like this. We get people come in who absolutely fall in love with this, and well, that's fine for them. And it's a beautiful looking gun, but these older ones are better done. I think that's just that depth, and the variety of depth is nice, whereas this is just a uniform thing. I mean, again, it's by the by, it doesn't really make much of a difference. Trigger looks identical, just this one's had 35 years of wear. And the rest of it is, okay, apart from mass engraving differences on the action, pretty similar. One thing that is different is this is a millimetre thicker in the action than this, which means it needs a different trunnion set more than anything. It means something. Whether that means it's stronger, I don't know. I'm gonna go with yes. I'm gonna go with I prefer having a millimetre thick extra action, and it does add a little bit of weight as well. You have a silver pigeon on the top of this one, you do not on the other. That's another nice little touch, but well, it's a nice little touch. Let's leave it at that. Wood to metal fit. Wood to metal fit actually, well, ironically, is better on the action, the stock to action, whereas the stock to action here is not something to be too happy about. However, the wood to metal on the Fore-end is better on the older one. Tell that how you will, I don't really care. That's just the way it is. Wood to metal fit is rarely great in guns. It really isn't bad on this silver pigeon at all, apart from the stock on this older one, but the Fore-end on this is nicely done. You know, by comparison to many modern guns, is a good quality fit. Metal to metal fit is extremely comparable. Extremely comparable. I can't really pick that many holes or that many differences in either. I could pick holes in both. There is something really nice about these deep carved fences here. However, the actual metal to barrel fit is much better on this than it is on this. There's quite a large chamfer around the edge of a flange there, whereas the flange here is less great. Who knows, man? Who knows? One better than the other. Actually, I'd probably call it that the machining on this new one is better, purely because machining has got better and cheaper in the last 35 years because of computing and technology, which is great. You know, hand finishing is great and hand checkering is amazing, and that there is certain things that I think are better done by hand, but there's also certain things that are better done by machine, namely just about every bit of engineering, because it removes that human element, doesn't it? The Fore-end checkering is different. The wood to metal fit on the Fore-end on both of these is less than exotic around that lever, so there is no winner there. The checkering is different. Obviously the hand checkering, as I've said, wins my heart, and I think the finish on that Fore-end is nice, but it's hard to say because, I mean, although I've seen some very little used and they are in this sort of similar condition, but you never know what it's been through. Fore-end wise, they now predominantly schnabel, however you can get the rounded, and back then they were predominantly rounded. The rounded Fore-end has massive benefits. It really does. You know, there's versatility, practicality, whereas the schnabel Fore-end is kind of more of a display of quality, isn't it? The actual practical purposes of a schnabel are fairly limited. You can't touch the end of the gun with your finger because it's not comfortable and is very liable to chip. Depending on what you're going to use this for, I would say it's a beautiful thing. It's a positive in terms of gun making quality and an uphill movement. However, yeah, I just don't like schnabels particularly anyway, but that's just me. Barrels have changed a lot as well. This is board 18.4, this is board 18.6. This has extended forcing cones, the old one does not. This has Optima multi-chokes, this one is a fixed choke. The barrel technology has come a long way, but as we discussed in a recent video, doesn't really make a damn difference anyway. You know, there is marginal differences in recoil and patterning and cartridge fussiness. However, a good pattern's a good pattern, period. So, I mean, what conclusions can you draw from this apart from, well, the first one is that model on model, it is not fair. Guns have come so far in the last 35 years in terms of fashion, trends, and styles that actually trying to compare even, let's say, this game 687 to a modern game 687 is unfair, you know, because the modern 687 is going to be more fit for purpose for the market. The older 687 is just, it's not out of date, but is a very different gun. Really, to do a proper comparison, you need to look across the range. So this Silver Pigeon 1 Sporter would be comparable back then to an old 682. And if you put those two together, suddenly there's a bit of a comparison to be had. However, that old 682 was a premium gun at the time, and this is now a base gun. So if you look at technological filtering, actually the new ones are better guns because the technology comes down through the ranks. So we're getting better tech, certainly we're getting better machining. Yeah, we're getting less hand finishing, and there's something to be said for old 682s, and also I had an X-Trap back in the day, and it was an amazing gun. They probably had a little bit more soul back then, but I think they're going back in that direction. But again, you have to pay comparably higher money to what you had to pay back then. But not because you have to buy the same gun in the grade, that you're just, I don't think, who knows, right? But in my humble opinion, they have not got worse. They've not really got better. But they have changed. The engineering, I've said, has got better. They are less hand finished. They are more money. But that's because everybody buys them. And everyone will continue buying them at the price. And they were less money back then, purely because, as I've said, the world was a damn different place in 1985. Well, thanks very much for watching, guys. Take care. I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments because we hear so much about it. I'd love to get some of it in writing down below in the comment section as to whether do you think older Berettas are better. And I have opinions about other brands and how they've changed, but I genuinely feel like Beretta have upped their game, or at least are still just as good, if not a little bit better than they were. Take care, goodbye, and I'll see you next time.